Hey guys, welcome to ADHD Founders, where we are three ADHD founders and we are talking about running our own businesses and the challenges that we face around that, partly because of ADHD, but also just running businesses. So, welcome to episode number 2. Three. Oh my
Actually,
God.
it's
All right,
episode
let's
like
do that again.
57 or something, I think.
57.
Right. Because we lovingly took over the weekly build.
And it's good that we actually got a time because, like, we're all over the place, right? And Jesse, you've been traveling and you just got back from South by Southwest.
So this
How's
is
that?
my first time ever being to South by Southwest. Kind of a long story, but I got accepted on a panel, which was amazing. And so I got to speak, on Monday for a panel at South by Southwest about how to empower people with ADHD in the workplace. So that was amazing. And we got the platinum badges, which if you've been to South by Southwest, I had no idea. So I've never been. I had no idea what to expect. But people treat you like royalty when you have the platinum badge. Like people are giving you free stuff everywhere. It was a wild experience. Either of you been to South by Southwest before?
Yeah, I've been a few times, but not since like 2013. What about you, Marie?
Yeah, I've been once, and I think it was around 2013 as well, and I did not have the platinum badge.
Yeah, I think I went with my boss at the time, Sam Altman, and he was speaking. So I think I got the you're a groupie of a speaker badge, and it may have been platinum because I do remember us getting through things pretty easily. But I've never been to South by Southwest and been able to just enjoy it or chill. I've always been like grinding on some specific goal to get a bunch of people to an event or to have them show up at things but we did some really fun some of my favorite marketing moments were of my career were at South by Southwest for sure.
Yeah, it's a really wild conference. So I kind of had no idea what to expect. I got the invite and then we, prepared our panel and everything like that. And then kind of just last minute, I actually had a family friend in the area. So I flew to Austin with my whole family. And then we stayed with my friend who had like a kind of a side house that we were able to stay in. And then my family flew back and then I went to South by Southwest. And it's like the whole city. Like the conference, it just kind of takes over all of like kind of downtown Austin, or at least, I don't know Austin well. To me, it seemed like it was kind of like the downtown area. And it was just like, I don't know how many blocks, but it was just like everywhere. And there's people everywhere. And I remember I was at my friend's house a couple days before I was supposed to go, to speak. And I was looking through the schedule. I'm like, oh, what talks I can go to after our panel, because we were speaking in the morning. And I'm scrolling through this list. And I was like, there are so many talks. I probably went through like 50. It felt like 50 talks and they all sound interesting. And there's all like random celebrities, like at so many of them, like, oh, this talk looks interesting. And then I click on that and like, oh, one of the speakers there is Mark Cuban. He's just like there at one of the talks casually
Yeah.
there. And I scrolled through and then I get to kind of near the end of this list. And then I see it says 11 a.m. I was like, those are all just the talks happening during 1 hour. It was unbelievable. I couldn't even I felt like I needed like 6 months to prepare if I was going to do it right. And I didn't prepare at all. So I was just kind of like
Yes.
winging it. But had like an amazing time just sort of like wandering around, checking out. I got to see Conan O'Brien, which was pretty cool. He was kind of like co-paneling a video game talk, which was like hilarious because he's not a great gamer, but he has kind of his like Clueless Gamer video series that he does. So that was really fun. And then I also got to see Jay Graber, the CEO of Blue Sky. And so she was talking about, like how Blue Sky is, billionaire proof because it's using a protocol instead of being like centralized, servers or whatever. Oh, and there's also, did they have all the different houses when you all went?
I think that was just kind of starting.
Yeah. So my assumption is that it was probably like it started out as just kind of like, oh, hey, after the show today, we're gonna have a house party over here or something like that. But now it's become all like an official part of it. So there's like the Australia house and the Tennessee house, and there's like all these like specific houses all over the place, and they scan your badge when you get in there, which again was like platinum badge. It was like skipping the line and get right in there, no problem.
Yeah. Excuse me, platinum, come through.
Yeah, exactly. Every hour there could have been 50 things to do, like from like morning to, late into the night. There's just like nonstop. And I was only there for during the interactive portion. The music was just kind of starting like the day I left. And then there's just like concerts by all the people you've heard of. I almost saw a panel where Kesha was on the panel, but that was during the same time as the Conan O'Brien one, and so I had to see Conan.
Tough call.
Yeah.
I probably would have gone Conan too. I feel like maybe it's after COVID, conferences in general. I'm an extrovert, like for sure, no doubt about it. And conferences give me anxiety. And we three are actually all going to a conference together, the Neurodiversion conference.
Yeah.
And I've actually already have a little bit of anxiety about just small talk. It's small talk. I'm not great at small talk. I think that's where I struggle.
Yeah, I'm also not great at small talk. So I was glad that I had my like panelists with me. So the three people on the panelists were Jay Lynn, Margot Jaffe, and Julia Mullins, who are all three like other voices kind of in the ADHD community. I was really glad they were there because then I had people to hang out with, and like, Julia, come hang out with me and we can go to this next thing together, because otherwise I would just be like a wallflower. Because I'm kind of right in between extrovert and introvert. I always like score 50-50, like right in the middle. And it's like I get energized by a conference, but I'm also like scared to talk to anybody that I don't know. So
yeah. Did you ever do the Myers-Briggs test? Is that what
I
you're
always
referring
score
to?
an X, and everyone doesn't know what that means,
An
which is
X?
if you're exactly in the middle. So my Myers-Briggs score is an XNFP, and I've taken it multiple times.
God, are you serious? I am an NFP I guess ex-NFP as well, because the first time I took it, I was INFP, and then the second time I was ENFP. I reckon what it is it depends on my ADHD level at the time, because I can get
Very much could be the
sensory
case, yeah.
overload. Like I like the connection and I get some energy from it, but then if I'm tipped over from sensory overload, then I get really introvertish. So I think that's why I'm in the middle. But apparently the INFP is like the rarest of 16 types. I can't believe we're the same. Did you ever do it, Sharon?
Oh, I have, but I always get embarrassed when this comes up because I don't retain it. Like it does. I in my brain, I could not even tell you. I would just have to make up letters. But I remember when I get it, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. But I talk to people all the time who are like, you're probably a EWQ57, and I'm like, cool, good to know.
Cool.
But I don't know why I think that I don't know why those, like, my brain rejects labels. I don't know.
That definitely means that you're a specific type that you reject and don't remember.
Yeah, because I think that, I could write it down, I guess, right? But
the type that doesn't care about it. Like,
yeah, I think that I'm like, if I need to know, I'll know, or I don't know. I definitely don't feel like I'm above it. I love this conversation. I don't know. I think it is kind of an ADHD thing. Like if it's not interesting to you, or if that's not a goal for you, it just kind of, you just cycle it on through.
One thing to pivot a little bit. So one thing I wish that I had prepared going to South by was, I wish the app that I've been working on, like WavePal, was at a place where I could actually tell anybody about it or kind of promote it or something like that. Because I didn't really think about it beforehand, but once I was there, it was kind of like, this feels like maybe a missed opportunity. I'm just like surrounded by a lot of people that are connected to a lot of people. And it felt like, oh man, if I was in a different place with it, maybe I could start having some conversations with people or something like that. I did go to one talk that was about, it was like VCs for creators, which sounded really interesting, but they were like talking about like funding, like Mr. Beast and like some bigger ones like that. And just sort of like talking like what it's like to fund like a creator-led business instead of like a more traditional business.
Right. You're like, I'm listening.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, hey, that's me as a creator. What's going on here? But then like at one point, one of the people on the panel was talking, they said something to the effect of like, we're even like looking at like smaller creators. So like people that are only making like $2 to $5 million annually. And I was like, I'm way below
Oh,
that.
that's small.
That's what they're considering small. All right.
Small
This
data
is
ones.
not the talk that's going to be very helpful to me.
Well, I mean, from a creator perspective, but you are actually building an app, like
Right, right,
technology.
right.
You're not just, I mean, not to minimize creator, but you
No, I
have
know what you
other
mean.
lines that you're pursuing, which
Yeah.
I think would help you if you're looking for investment. You're not just banking on the creator. That's just like a perk, kind of.
Totally, totally. Yeah, because I mean, that was the other thing. I was definitely not going to, like, I wasn't going to that talk actually interested in, because I don't think that sounds weird to me, like the whole, like, of getting investing as a creator, because it's like, how much of do they own? I don't know how all that would work. And as they were talking about it, I was like, this is just kind of weird. I think it's maybe for people that are looking to exit, like they've built up a lot of things and they want to get out, and then VC helping to build up a business around what they've built so they can sort of like retreat from being the centerpiece. Anyway, it was a really interesting talk, but not something I'm actually interested in doing.
Oh wait, you're not interested in fundraising?
I'm not
You
interested in fundraising as a creator. Like, I
as a
wouldn't want
creator,
somebody to
gotcha.
like
Gotcha.
ADHD Jesse. Like, I don't want that to be like funded. For like WavePal, that is something I'm certainly curious about, just for like the ability to work on that full time and have some
Yeah.
sort of backing. But it's also a world I don't really know very well. And so
Yeah.
we talked beforehand, hey, let's do this episode and maybe talk a little bit about the funding stories for both Shopful and Llama Life. So yeah, maybe we could dive into that.
And I think that also even just talking about that early stage that you're in and just like things to think about when you're thinking about fundraising and like what it even means to have an investor at an early stage. Because I mean, I think, Jesse, I would suspect that you have that perspective because I think at heart you're a product guy, you're a product builder.
100%.
And so I feel like that's where your heart is. And that makes sense. I guess there's probably a larger group of investors that invest in tech companies than creators probably. So
yeah, I would
it's
assume
probably
so
going to
as well.
behoove you. Yeah. Yeah. I love Marie's just casually tossing this ball, so I want to call her. Maria, I just feel like you're just building up to this fundraising story. So we have different stories. Can you tell your story first? Because I feel like it's probably more typical or more relatable. I have a weird one.
Well, I didn't set out to fundraise. I have done startups before where I did really want to fundraise and it didn't really pan out. But Llama Life, I wasn't planning at all. And I was just building the product in public on Twitter and sharing kind of the journey. And I remember at the time I had like a lifetime deal that was going to be taken away. And so you can't just take something away without telling people. So I actually put it on Twitter and I said, hey, there's a lifetime deal, but it's going to go away in 24 hours. And that tweet just blew up. Like it got
lifetime,
a lot of
like membership.
Yeah, lifetime
Llama
deal.
Life.
It's in
Okay.
opposite to a subscription. So a lifetime deal will be like a one-time payment and you have it for the lifetime of the product.
Okay.
And so I was taking that away. I put it on Twitter to say that it was going and the tweet just blew up and it got retweeted a bunch of times. Somebody from an accelerator program saw it and they DM'd me and we started chatting over DMs and they said, have you ever thought about raising money? We like what you're doing with Llama Life. We like the journey. We can see that there's momentum, there's progress. And that's one of the things that an investor will look for. Like there needs to be some kind of momentum. And that can take many different forms. But he's like, yeah, like maybe think about going through an accelerator program. Typically, as part of an accelerator program, there is kind of like a fundraising event at the end. So for those who don't know, an accelerator program is, what the name sounds like. It's to help accelerate your business in some way. And usually there is a cohort of people that you go through it with, and it might be for like 3 months. And it's very intensive. And every week you show up and you talk about what you've done and how you're growing the business. And typically toward the end, there's like a demo day. And I know, Sharon, you can talk about this as well with your experience, but there's like a demo day at the end where you present your business to a bunch of investors, and sometimes they'll invest and sometimes they don't, but you might have momentum off the back of that to get some funds and
connections
and relationships. And that's what happened with me. So I went through this accelerator program, which I applied for after this accelerator reached out to me.
Do you want to say which one?
Sure. Yeah, it was the Launch Accelerator. It's run by Jason Calacanis. He's a big angel investor in Silicon Valley. He's invested in startups like Uber, Robinhood, Calm.com, and he had put together this accelerator. So I went through that. At the end of it, we did demo day. I didn't get any investment from demo day, but I got momentum from that. So I talked, I sort of honed my pitch, the way that I talked about the business. Like I really kind of got that down. Then I just started talking to a bunch of investors after that and managed to raise a small seed round, or actually pre-seed round. That was a few years ago now, though. So that money's actually run out, which is what we talked about in one of the previous episodes. I used that money to hire a team. So I hired 2 extra people, but that money's now gone. So I actually had to, unfortunately, let those people go. And now I'm back to being kind of a solo founder, just running it on my own funds, basically, and the revenue that comes in. But it was an interesting experience. I don't think it's a typical experience because they reached out to me. And so in some ways, I already had some internal support. Like I had somebody on their accelerator team that was really rooting for me and kind of helping push me through. I don't think it's normally that easy to get into an accelerator program, and obviously depends which one you go through. So my one was called Launch. Sharon, I know you went through an accelerator program as well.
I actually didn't go through as a founder.
Oh.
I worked at an accelerator.
Gotcha. And you weren't just working at any accelerator, you were working at the accelerator.
Yeah, they started the whole accelerator thing.
Yeah.
Y Combinator.
Mhm.
And it was, I think, Marie, I think you captured it well. I think that I would say though, Marie, while it certainly isn't typical, I think, for everyone to get outreach, Y Combinator partners were constantly looking out for companies that they would proactively reach out to, or just kind of think, things that popped up on Hacker News or introductions from other founders. I mean, I think that not everyone thinks that that they're ready to apply, right? Like that. So the accelerators typically include an application process. I mean, if someone reaches out to you proactively, maybe you have a better chance of getting in. I think Y Combinator's acceptance rate is like lower than Harvard's acceptance rate. So it is kind of, but they will tell you every day that many founders don't get in on their first time applying. Like some really successful stories actually got in on their like second, third time. It's an option. And I think Marie, I feel like I wonder if you got this from it too. Y Combinator, I feel like most people would say, obviously the demo day at the end where you're able to get in front of investors is huge, but also just the community of founders that you're able to
definitely
meet and like the advice along the way. Like it pushes you. It's an accountability, right?
Yeah, because the thing is, like when you work on your own, it's hard to know kind of where you are. Like if you're surrounded by other people doing the same thing, you kind of compare yourself to them and you get motivated by that as well. And you go, oh, wow, someone is up here this week. They did all these things and their business has grown. And you feel that competitive pressure to go, oh, I'm actually a bit behind. And, everybody's different, but that stuff really drives me. Like I'm super competitive. And when I feel like I'm behind, I'm like, oh, I need to get up there and I need to be like on the same level as that person. And if you're not surrounded by people doing the same things, you can easily like lose where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is like super important, to always surround myself with people who are doing similar things and have similar goals and aspirations and are like very motivated, because that keeps me in check. Otherwise, I think I could fall behind and almost not know it, like
right. Or someone to call you out and kind of like, is that where you should be spending your time? Like those things help too.
Exactly.
Right?
So yeah, I 100% agree. A lot of it is about the community of people that you're thrown into and the advice that you get.
I'm curious, before we kind of move to maybe Shelful's story, I'm curious, Marie, what are the terms for that? Like, what are they expecting to get back? How much ownership or control or something like that does an investor have? How much are you free to still make all your own decisions? Because you hear, like, I feel like from me on the outside, having not gone through that experience, and actually it's kind of similar to like with writing a book, like self-publishing versus going through a publisher. And I hear all the horror stories of people that went through a publisher and then they don't have control, and then they get a book where they hate the cover and there's no way to change that because the publisher actually has that control. And so I hear the same sort of thing with like, oh, VCs only want the next $1 billion company. And if you're not a company that's going to become worth $1 billion, you're kind of worthless and just like getting all these like goals you're supposed to hit that feel impossible to hit if you're not going to be that billion-dollar unicorn or whatever. So what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it depends, but in general, like, I guess the way to think about it, and Sharon, you can chime in here too, but it's an investment for them, right? So they are looking for a big return. I think typically it's like about 10x return, right? And they know that it's a gamble as well. So if they invest in 100 companies, they know they're really looking for like that one big unicorn that's going to pay for the 99 other failures. And they know that. That's the game. That's what people go in it for. It's not just a charity, it's an investment. So they are definitely looking for a return. In terms of how much control you have of the company, I think a lot of it's like who you get in bed with, right? Like it's the investors that you partner with, and that's a decision that you make as well. So it's like a job interview. It's a two-way street. Like they're looking to invest in your company, but you're looking to go into a relationship with them. And if you pick investors that you feel you get along with and you're the same mindset, same wavelength, then that's probably going to be a lot easier for you. I still had 100%. I was making all the decisions. I would get the advice from investors, but I would still make the final decision. I didn't get pressured into doing something I didn't want. There were at times advice that was kind of conflicting with my own, but in the end, I still made the decision. So I know that's not always the case. I have heard of founder stories where they're getting kind of pushed into a certain direction. That could be the investors. That could also be the amount of money that's thrown at a company. I think when you get later on into like Series A, B, C, the stakes are a lot higher, right? And investors are going to have a lot more say.
And they're going to get a board seat too. They'll officially have a say.
With Llama Life, it's so early that it doesn't make sense to form a board, right? The investors have something in the contract that says when a board is formed, I would like a seat, something like that. But the board isn't formed at pre-seed stage. So there's not like an official voting right in terms of saying you have to do something at pre-seed level. But definitely later on, like, yeah, you could get, this is what happened with Steve Jobs. He got voted out of his company because the board voted him out, right? That's when the control is a little bit different, but not at the
in publicly traded companies. You're gonna
of course.
Right.
That's part of a condition of being a public company.
Yeah,
way later on, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
But for Llama Life, we're talking about pre-seed, the earliest sort of stage where none of that's formed yet. It's not worth spending the time like doing that either because you don't really, it's so small.
Yeah, I think the investors also have a right, I think, to ask you questions and to ask for updates. You could completely ghost them and not answer their questions. You're not like required to, but that wouldn't be great for your outcomes, future funding outcomes, I think, right? The relationships that people talk, it's a smallish community generally. So I think I don't know any founders who didn't care about keeping their investors in the loop. And investors, especially seed stage investors, have seen a lot of companies, right? They've seen a lot of the pitfalls and the easy traps it's not just money, it's advice, especially at a seed stage. I think that that's a lot of what companies want. And I think accelerators, if we're not talking about individual investors, an accelerator like Y Combinator, I think their deal change, I think it's now $500,000 they give each company for 7% of their company. And so with that, you're getting the network of, not just, at this point, many, many years into it, the network includes like the founders of Airbnb and Dropbox and Stripe. And, so you have kind of this greater founder network and alumni to tap, as well as exposure to investors and 3 months worth of really good advice from YC partners, most of whom are former founders. So I think that it's not just like the guy with the money, the gal with the money. It's someone who has experience that can help you. And I think you're often looking for an investor, or the investors who might be interested in you have some flavor of experience in your realm or just believe in you. I think that most investors for an early stage startup would probably say that they invest more in the team than the product, because the product can change, but the team is what, might make the difference between a startup that weathers the storm or not, which is, I guess, kind of how I got my investment, because we didn't have much of a product. I think that team definitely was the main ingredient. So I can tell you about my atypical story. I think it's important to note that in Silicon Valley, I think progress has been made, but women specifically have not had great luck fundraising in Silicon Valley or in just generally in tech, or I guess broadly, probably beyond tech. I think as a woman, I'm very aware and appreciative of my specific path, and I know how lucky it was because it's not common for. I think that there's all the things you might expect of kind of women in business, but they're much more likely to be doubted or have to prove themselves twice as much as a male founder might be with the same product and the same numbers, right? So I think that I just feel like that has to be said. I had the unfair advantage of having worked in Silicon Valley for my whole career at that point. So I'd worked with startups, I'd worked at startups, and I worked at Y Combinator. So I think that, the big thing that I did was I worked for a guy, his name is Sam Altman, I worked really hard. I think Sam and I got along great because I just worked crazy hard right along with him. We were super compatible coworkers in terms of he's a fast listener. He doesn't really value somebody who's going to give him the whole story. He'd rather you just kind of, this is what we're doing. This is why. Bye. Like if a call goes longer than 5 minutes with Sam, and this is before he ever touched OpenAI, this is how he was when he was a founder of this little company called Looped, which is the startup that I worked at with him. So I worked with him at 3 different companies, Looped, the company that acquired us, and then he was one who hired or who directed Y Combinator or got me kind of in the hiring loop for the position I had at Y Combinator. So I had that extremely unfair advantage of having a contact like him in my network. But I actually didn't reach out to him because I didn't feel like, I honestly wouldn't have felt like I had proven that I could get investment yet. So I had launched Shelpful, and by launch, I mean put up a dummy website that was essentially just had a button that clicked you to a type form that allowed you to sign up. And then when you signed up, we sent you a text through the CRM. So I had kind of tape and glued a product together and had posted on a few Facebook groups and other places. And we got a lot of interest and a lot for the fact that I was still at my other job. There was no company formed. There was nothing, no legal things had happened. It was just kind of an exciting, just early couple weeks of a startup. Like, wow, this could be a thing. And he heard about 3 weeks into it or 4 weeks into it, a mutual friend had texted Sam and said like, hey, do you see what Sharon was working on? And so he actually called me. And so it's not the common thing, but I'll check the humbleness for a second. And I think that the conversation was, of course, a fast one. Told him a little bit about what the product was and what I thought it could be. And his response to me was, I'm so glad you're finally doing this, which was, it will always just make my heart warm because I never planned on starting a startup and never talked to him about it. And
Right.
so I was very happy to I loved working at startups. I never specifically wanted to start one because I don't think I didn't have a problem hadn't hit me over the head like it did with Shelpful. And so to have someone that you respect and have worked with a lot kind of say that to you, I think was just evidence that sometimes when you work really hard with people who care and who watch that and value aptitude and kind of think that you can get stuff done and have grit, which I think I do, that can be the thing. Like that can be the team factor that can get you in the door. So, I mean, not just to say like, hey, work hard now and it could pay off later. I mean, that's kind of what happened for me. I don't think it was just because I'm like a sweet gal. It was because I work hard and he knows it. Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, I can see that Marie's jumping on the bit to say something. So I'll just really want to quickly say, like, there's nothing more like incredible than hearing about someone that believes in you like that. That's such a cool, like someone that was rooting for you behind the scenes you didn't even know, and that saw something in you that maybe you didn't even see yourself, and then finding that out. That's just such a cool feeling. So that's so cool for you. I'm goosebumps. Yeah, goosebumps.
I know. I haven't actually told the story in a while, so I actually am kind of getting a little pumped. Yeah.
That's so awesome. All right, I'll let you go, Marie.
Well, no, I was just thinking, like, as you were telling that story, I was like, there's sort of a commonality between what you just said and what I said, in that it's all about like demonstrating what you're doing and demonstrating that you've got momentum and grit and all that stuff and resourcefulness. And we did it in different ways. Like I demonstrated that on Twitter. And you could go through my whole timeline, right? You can see every day I'm working on this thing, I'm making progress. And
there's evidence.
There's evidence, right?
Yes.
And so I had very public evidence that I was doing this and I was, it was moving, and there were people that were actually interested. You could see the comments on the posts that I was making that people wanted this thing. That was my way of demonstrating that. And Sharon, your way was demonstrating that with Sam, like all the years you'd worked together
over like a decade. Yeah.
Previous companies.
Right. Yeah.
And so, if it's a little bit like a job interview where if you just apply for a job that you see advertised online, the chances of getting that are pretty low. But if you're working with other people and you've built relationships and you've proved yourself and demonstrated what you can do, then you're probably going to get a job through connections or through someone seeing your work. So I think that the lesson for me hearing this is like, you kind of have to put yourself out there, right? Either like you're working with someone else and you're demonstrating that, or you're putting yourself out there publicly and showing like what you can do. If you just kind of sit at home and do your thing, and you've got to talk about it. And the chances of you getting into an accelerator or investment, I just think they go up exponentially when the proof is out there versus you just applying. Like if you do a good application for Y Combinator, all that proves is that you can do a good application, but they have to believe that you're actually doing all that stuff, because you can just write stuff.
Or that you're uniquely qualified to do it. I think that like we've talked about building, like solving your own problem. And Jesse, even with WavePal, I think that everything you said is so true, Marie. So +1 to all that. And I think the other element is that you and I didn't like have a goal to have a venture-backed startup. And I think that it's important to note, because I started this because I needed it. And that's what you did too. And that's what you're doing, Jesse, with WavePal.
Right.
And I think that carries through to the execution, right? So that was what was evident on Twitter. I think for Sam, he heard it from me, I think, on that call, of course, but I think he knew that I wouldn't just start something just for kicks. Like,
right.
And I wouldn't. And I think that your intention isn't enough to get investment, but the underlying intention that drives you and that drives the decisions that you're making and the product you're putting out matters, because that hopefully is resulting in a better product that's more tuned, because you are the tuner and you're the customer, both.
Right.
And not just more tuned, but the motivation level that you have is so much higher, because when things get tough, if you're not invested in the actual problem and you care about like the actual problem deeply, you're going to lose motivation. But
especially if you have ADHD.
But for me, and I think with you, Sharon, as well, like we're so invested in this problem, like I don't ever want to stop working on this problem. And the execution of it might change. So Llama Life might change like its form, and maybe it's not even Llama Life down the track, right? But the underlying problem of trying to help people focus and manage their day and get through a day, and that problem is so near and dear to me. Like I'll never stop working on it.
Right. I think we all care deeply about having this customer thrive, right?
Yeah, totally.
And be better off because they maybe used the thing that we made. Like, whoa, talk about chills. Like, I think that even just knowing one person used my service and liked it, like sent me through the roof. Like,
right.
You know what I mean?
Thanks both for sharing that. Yeah, I think we're with WavePal. I feel like we're sort of in a weird phase right now where we're both, like me and my co-founder, we both work full time. We're both, in our 40s. We've got families and kids and stuff like that, which does make it harder to do a thing like this on the side. Because I think we both would love to bootstrap it ideally, but also the reality is it's hard to do that when you have kids and full-time job and stuff like that, which is why I think I'm more considering what the options are, because I do really care about this problem. And I feel like we have the skill set to really be able to tackle it and solve it, because it's something I've struggled with for so long, just like managing my relationships and keeping in touch with my friends and knowing like important details like, oh my gosh, it's been my best friend for 20 years. Why can't I remember the name of his kids? Like being able to have that stuff and having like one central kind of app that controls like I'm really passionate about having that and finding myself wanting to update it all the time. Like I'm like, oh, I can add that to, that's an important detail I want to remember later. And I don't want to just throw it in a random note in my notes app that has 4,000 notes that I never remember to check because I don't remember where I put that information. And so
Right.
having sort of like a central people focused place to store that is something I'm really excited about. And it's one of those things where we know the problem exists. Like I know the problem exists because I've experienced the problem space my whole life of like struggling to with all this stuff, managing just the ADHD and then managing relationships with people and how difficult that is. And I don't know if what we're building right now is the solution, but I do know we're passionate about finding the solution through this sort of like building process.
But no, I think that matters. And you, I think, have your point kind of, I guess, could be also summed up that investment can buy you time. Sometimes,
Right.
like either more time to work on something full time or a longer runway to work on it before, like to give it a good chance of succeeding. But I
Yeah.
think, we've talked a lot about the team and the type of person and caring a lot about the problem, but execution factors in there too, right? So like, how many times have you guys been sitting around and a friend was like, man, I thought of that idea when they see like a product come up and
Right.
it makes you chuckle a little bit if you're in the startup space at all, because ideas don't matter.
Totally. Yeah.
Knowing enough about how to solve it and caring enough to keep going back to it and building, that's what actually matters, whether or not you succeed in the end or not.
There's nothing worse than having like a friend reach out and be like, hey, I've got this really great app idea. Can you help me build it?
Oh my
And you're like, you
God.
don't know how to build anything. Do you think the idea is half the work? Because
Yeah.
it is like
Yeah,
less
yeah.
than 0.5% of the work.
Idea guys do not get funded. Do not
Totally.
get venture funding. I think unless they have like their mom is investing or something. Like that's
Right.
just not
Yeah.
that's not the way it works.
Perfect example is like Llama Life is because it's basically a to-do list and you can set timers against every item in the list. That's not a new idea. There's like other products that kind of let you do a similar thing or you could just get a kitchen timer and just put it on your desk and use the timer that way. But it's the execution. It's how everything's put together, the experience, like how it feels and stuff, the design. Like there's so much more to it than just that idea. It's the same with meditation apps, right? Meditation apps are just MP3s. You could just get a CD or an MP3 of a meditation
Or
and
YouTube.
listen to it. Or YouTube,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But that's not the experience. And people want it on their phones. They want to have it tailored to the problem that they're having. So I tell the app, this is what I want to do, or I need help with anxiety or whatever. And then it goes, here is what I recommend. And it might capture a streak, like you've meditated every day. It'll show you other people who are meditating with you. Like there's so much more to it than just an MP3. And that's the difference. Like
you see something that is missing and you're curious enough to like poke at it.
Yeah, exactly. I think with what you said, Jesse, I feel like an accelerator would be so perfect for you because like before you go for like investment directly, because the accelerator will give you a little bit of money. Basically, the expectation though is if you get into an accelerator, you need to quit your job. Like that would be the expectation, right? Because they want you to go all in, and that's why they give you the money. So you can go all in for an intense period of time.
Pay for food.
And be very, very focused on doing that. It also will help you clarify the problem, the customers, the execution a little bit. It'll help you like hone all of that stuff, which might mean a slightly different execution. Or sometimes people have a completely different idea halfway through. I feel like that would be a good way to get the clarity around it before you go straight to an investor. I don't know. What do you think, Sharon?
Yeah, I think you hit that if you're ready to work on something full time, that is probably the deciding factor. I mean, the accelerators will take, a percentage of your company, but I feel like it actually might be a Mark Cuban quote, full circle, Jesse. But I feel like this always sticks in my head. Like, would you rather have 100% of a grape or 90% of a watermelon? If somebody can help you make your company grow, I don't get too fiddly about equity. I mean, obviously to a degree, but like when I asked my friend, and I guess we could probably do a whole episode on this, but like I had the idea for Shelfwell initially, reached out to my friend and told her about it. She like fully understood it. And she was like, sure, I'll help you on it. Like, do you want, like, I can work? And I was like, no, like, I'll give you half the company. Come over and work on it. Like, to me, I don't care. Like, was it going to succeed past the month 3 if I was in it alone? That's where
Right.
I was coming from, because I just knew that I wanted someone who could go through the lumps with me and pull me out, and then I could pull them out. And I just knew that I didn't want to do it alone. That's my perspective. And so I wasn't fiddly about it, because it might have not, I mean, if I didn't have Lydia, I might have not made it past the
Right.
first week, because I would have maybe got disheartened when the first few posts on Facebook groups didn't, and I got distracted by something else. And I don't know, but I think that that's how I feel about, I think, seed stage investors too, is if they're not taking a lot and they have something to add, I think it's a no-brainer. But I guess I think I've kind of drank that Kool-Aid. I think that it's usually more helpful than not. I do think there are probably more reputable accelerators than others. I bet it's just such a common thing now that there probably are some that are scammy out there. So I think like
Right.
talking to other founders, researching it, that kind of stuff would obviously be important. Being open to it probably is part of it. Actually, I'll say one more thing, and maybe you could edit. I feel like I rambled a little bit there, but I have heard founders say, and Marie, I don't know if you felt like this, but even just filling out the Y Combinator application was crystallizing for them and their business, because the types of questions they ask are a little, more forward thinking, or allow you to just kind of a little bit higher level look down at your company and think about things. And so there's not much downside to applying, I guess, is the other thing, if nothing else, than to give you the gift of clarity.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that you just said as well, in terms of like splitting companies and stuff, like basically like a big chunk. Like if you go in and you give somebody who's partnering with you a small chunk, they're also not going to be very motivated. Right. It is really important, I think, also that you kind of put in the same effort. Like if somebody's working full-time and the other person's not working full-time on it, that's a recipe for disaster. Like that's going to blow up at some point. Like when the going gets tough, it's going to blow up. Like you're going to start to resent it. Like that person's not putting in the same amount of effort or time as me, or, or they've got a higher share or lower share. Like it's got to be pretty even at the start, I think.
Right. And from a numbers perspective, it makes sense, but it's telling to the relationship.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you're saying. Like it's telling to how much each of you care in the business, or how you see each other as equals. Because you could easily be like, well, I'm the person who built it, so I should get more.
Right.
Like, that's like a 1% of the lifetime at this company.
Yeah. I had a previous company before Llama Life. This is many, many years ago. And I started it. I initially started it myself, and then I partnered with someone else on it. And I made this mistake. Like I gave him a really small share, and he got really upset about it. And I applied to Y Combinator, and I said to him, like, hey, if we get in, are you prepared to move to, San Fran and spend 3 months intensively doing this? And he said he wasn't prepared to do that. And it was totally okay. Like he couldn't leave his family in, I think it was New Jersey at the time. Like he just wasn't prepared to do that. And so that was already like, okay, this is not going to work, because we
just weren't on the same page.
Totally different expectations and what, in terms of how much we want to work on it. He wasn't willing to quit his full-time job either. I'm like, no, this is all unbalanced at the moment and it will just never work. So we kind of ended that pretty quickly. I do think it's super important conversation to have, especially if you're working with someone else. And like when I went into Llama Life, I was just by myself, solo founder. And it sounds like you were as well, Sharon?
For a hot second, yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't really have that issue at the beginning. But Jesse, you're working with someone else at the moment. So it's definitely a conversation to have sooner rather than later, I think.
Once you incorporate, you have to, like, that's part of the paperwork.
Right. Yeah. And I actually do have a tiny amount of experience with that, because when I was doing Polar Habits, we actually went through the process of incorporating, which then kind of was a headache, because that ended up kind of blowing up a little bit later, like not too much later after that. But I did go through that, where we had to like set like, oh, what are the shares and like what's the all of that sort of stuff, which Stripe Atlas is amazing, because it makes a lot of that really easy, because we're not actually doing paperwork. They've really digitized a lot of it, even though I've heard like other interviews where like literally behind the scenes, they're just doing all the paperwork for you, but automating it through like, through a web interface, which I'm like so thankful of services that do that sort of thing.
And even just the paperwork itself, like have it all templatized, because for early stage startups, it's pretty much the same deal. Like The company value is 0.
Right.
Here's the people working on it, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this is probably a good place to wrap up. So, in the next episode, hopefully I'll be announcing our new valuation and funding and all of that. It'll be great.
The $50 million investment
Yeah,
in
it's going to be
WavePal.
amazing.
Sight unseen.
Awesome. So we'll see y'all in a couple weeks.
Bye, everyone.